Okay, so this is an explanation of the extension of the Dear Constable letter. So this one's it's about a 6-pager, and it's for anyone who's ever suffered something like an apprehended violence order or an intervention order, some kind of family violence order, where there's been no actual crime committed, they've not harmed anyone, there's just had the other side make allegations that have no evidence or basis in fact, that never required any investigation. They were just taken as a statement of truth, and then you were punished for it, and then your life has been destroyed since that point, and that of your children. So if you've committed crimes, that doesn't cover you. So it's not for people who think they can get out of, doing the fact that they've done something and they want to get out of it. No, that's not for that. It won't work like that, okay? Because it's still a common law crime. So if you've done that, you're not really covered by this. This is where there's been no evidence, and yeah, you've been suffering and your family's been torn apart by a system that deliberately does that on purpose to find usually the parent who's going to be more susceptible to wanting to dominate and control, whether it's because they're in panic and fear and they've got paranoia, it's things like that, because they haven't healed from their trauma, their childhood traumas, or they've just got to that stage where they're just a full tilt narcissist. It doesn't really matter. The bottom line is that they're using the violence of the state to do that which they cannot do as an individual, and that in itself is highly immoral. And so this is what that's for. So just going to go past all the editable parts, because hopefully by now you understand how to do that. I want to go to the bits that have been added in that aren't in the Dear Constable letter, because it's, like I said, the 6 pages. So here we go. We just go to the quote from Winston Churchill, and here it says executive means police and prisons. So the power of the executive to cast a man into prison without formulating any charge known to the law, particularly to deny him the judgment of his peers. Alrighty, so what that means is that, just by hearsay, if you're just all of a sudden being punished, right, and without any sort of right of being heard and being able to prove your innocence, right, that's what those orders are. You don't get any chance to prove any kind of innocence. You're just immediately guilty, right? It says, is the highest degree odious and is the foundation of all totalitarian governments, whether Nazi or communist. So that tells you what kind of country we've been really living in, guys, not the one we've been told we've been living in. Just by the sheer fact of how they run that through the magistrates' courts. Those magistrates' courts are a one-sided rubber stamping, enforcement arm of government legislation that doesn't have the right to do that. Right? So that's what they do. And that's how you know you've been living in communism and totalitarianism, just by that fact alone. So here it says, at this juncture, it is critical to differentiate between law and legislation in order to articulate the duties that bestow officers enforcing the law. Law is derived from a fundamental moral principle known as the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them done to you. That says it all, guys. No police officer has ever done that. They've always followed legislation. And legislation has got nothing to do with this. It's the private musings and prejudices of a ruling class that seek to subjugate with absolute power. And that's what police officers are there to do. They're there to enforce it. So I'm just going to move down to this bit here, the red part, just so you can see this is where if you wanted to inject your private experience of your own misery that's come of it, this is the place to put it in. Again, where I've got the left and right hand sides, that's if you're writing it for yourself. The right hand side is if you're writing as a third party, who it doesn't affect directly, but you still wanted to send this in could be the local police station, could be your commissioner, could be both. But if it's your local, you want to go for the highest ranking member, so you need to find out who that is by giving them a call. Same thing, left hand side is if it's you, right hand side always the same, so hopefully that makes sense. We can get past that. So then, which part did I want to show you? Let me just think. Oh yeah, so here we go, talking about the consequences of trauma induced by you and your fellow officers, forcibly separating children from their biological protectors. So that talks about the ongoing suffering that you endure, and then also extended family members, who you share, the children share of profound bond, because once you remove one of the parents, usually they're suffering beyond just that parent. And so all these relationships that once upon a time, would have had value and meaning, all of a sudden are non-existent. So it just talks about your enforcement of your moral order stands as a significant contributor to the prevalence of fatherless, motherless homes. So they're part of the very criminal I guess, organisation that they say that they're there to fight, but they're actually doing it with their actions. And so then it talks about the unconscionable situation through their willful enforcement of family violence legislation, which is a concept known as precrime, that grants authority to punish individuals for crimes they have not committed. Precrime treats mere opinion as indisputable truth, completely disregarding the requirement for evidence or through investigation, or thorough investigation, should I say. Precrime bestows upon the accuser immunity from criminal prosecution for making false statements, elevating them above the law and allowing them to act with impunity. So it says such legislation undermines the very essence of justice by denying inherent individual rights and freedoms, creating a climate of anguish and torment where innocent people are unjustly targeted and punished. It tears apart the familial bonds that form the fabric of a cohesive and harmonious society. That's critical, guys. This is how they're destroying us, the ruling class, right? They're getting people within our own ranks to enforce things that they themselves would never tolerate. And the problem is these people who are doing the enforcing, they have a conscience and they're choosing not to follow it. So that's why we're writing to them. They don't have protection from karma, so we're letting them know about that. In this dystopian reality, individuals live in constant fear, stripped of their rights and subjected to unwarranted persecution. The consequences are devastating, eroding trust and perpetuating an environment of injustice and oppression. So here again, like it just says, where they stand in court of law under penalty of perjury and accept that they themselves will be willing to be punished, for an unsubstantiated complaint that lacks evidence of investigation. Were they willing to go on record to say it's fair and just for the accuser to be granted immunity from prosecution for making false statements, right? What kind of law is that? And that's what they're enforcing, right? So are they really law enforcers, or are they enforcing something else, which is, their master's private prejudices, so we can be subjugated and our families torn apart so they can harvest us and plunder us even more. And that's what these constables, they're supposed to be constables anyway, that's what they're paid and are willing to do. Even if your answer is yes to the question above, the law you are sworn to uphold is such that intentionally using force or violence against individuals where there is no verifiable evidence of harmful or aggressive behaviour violates the principles of impartiality and individual rights, which constitutes a crime against humanity. So now we're getting into the heavy stuff here, guys. Holding a lethal weapon and inflicting an arbitrary punishment on innocent people is the very definition of terrorism. Police constables who neglect their obligation to uphold their sworn oath as public servants are in open defiance of their sworn duty to safeguard individual rights, therefore participating in acts of domestic terrorism, which is considered a crime against humanity. So it goes and talks about that for a little bit more. So just another one that I wanted to bring up here. It says, in a court of law, guilt is not established solely based on whether the harm was done, but rather on whether the harm caused resulted from premeditated malicious intent. The fact that every police constable, when challenged, consistently refuses to confirm their commitment to their oath of office, despite publicly pledging to act impartially without malice or ill will, serves as undeniable evidence of a motive of premeditated intention to cause harm to the very people whose trust has been obtained under false pretenses, while perverting the course of justice. So this is really heavy stuff, guys. This is what we're doing, is we're not actually trying to get a win here. We are just letting them know of the severity of what they're doing as an individual that doesn't have an immunity from the laws of nature, and there's stuff coming for them, right? We just don't know when, but it's coming for them, right? So that's what this is basically letting them know. And so it's about them thinking about what the hell they're doing, because most of these people are dense and thick and will not face this stuff. So it's about each and every one of us picking this up and sending it through, because every attack on the family is an attack on you as an individual. It's whether you've made that connection or not. Anyway, so that's pretty much it. Just wanted to give you guys a heads up of what's available.